You can drive 5 hours to the Grand Canyon, walk up to the edge, and then realize you picked the wrong rim for the trip you actually wanted. Most people picture the Grand Canyon as one continuous viewpoint with two sides that you can easily hop between. The reality feels more like two completely different parks separated by distance, elevation, weather, and experience in a way that catches first time visitors off guard almost every day. The South Rim sits inside Grand Canyon National Park as the version most people recognize from photos, postcards, and national park documentaries. It's the place where you arrive through Flagstaff or Williams, Arizona. You step out of your car and immediately have access to dozens of overlooks without needing to plan much beyond parking and walking. The North Rim, on the other hand, feels quieter from the first mile of the approach road in. It sits higher on the Kaibab Plateau, there's more forest than desert, and it immediately signals a different kind of visit long before you ever reach the canyon edge. Here's what most travel planning sites don't make obvious at first glance. The South Rim and the North Rim may only be 10 miles apart, as the crow flies. Yet, as the human drives, it's roughly 200 to 220 miles if you're going from one rim to the other. That canyon forces a full loop around northern Arizona and southern Utah terrain, which is why seeing both rims in one day sounds simple on a map, and it turns into an all-day road trip in reality. It is not a simple side quest. Realistically, if you want to experience both rims without rushing, you're looking at least 2 full days just for the canyon. At least one day for the South Rim, a travel day to reposition, and another at least half day on the North Rim, depending on how deep you go. The South Rim is the easiest entry point for most travelers coming from Phoenix, Flagstaff, Las Vegas, or Sedona. Flagstaff is the most common gateway, sitting about 2 hours away. Las Vegas adds around 4.5 to 5 hours of driving. Phoenix is closer to 5 hours as well. Yet once you arrive, everything is pretty centralized in Grand Canyon Village. That includes lodging, visitor centers, shuttle access, and viewpoints, all connected by a well-established road system. That's where you'll find classic viewpoints like Mather Point and Yavapai Observation Station, along with access to two of the most famous hikes in the entire park, Bright Angel Trail and the South Kaibab Trail. Bright Angel is the more gradual, more forgiving descent with rest houses and water stops along the way, while South Kaibab drops you quickly into wide open canyon views that feel dramatic within minutes. This is also where most first time hikers realize the canyon is far larger and far more physically demanding than expected. These are not rim sidewalks. Once you go down Bright Angel or South Kaibab, you are committing to a descent that becomes significantly harder on the way back up. I go deeper into this in the episode on hiking below the rim, yet the key idea is simple. Distance down into the canyon is optional. Distance back out is mandatory. Now, lodging on the South Rim is part of the experience itself. Places like El Tovar Hotel and Bright Angel Lodge sit directly near the canyon edge, which means sunrise and sunset are often just a short walk from your room. The trade-off is crowds. This side of the canyon is one of the most visited national park locations in the US, which means shuttle buses, packed viewpoints at peak hours, and limited solitude during midday. Now shift to the North Rim and everything changes immediately in tone and scale. The North Rim of Grand Canyon National Park operates on a seasonal schedule, typically open from mid-May through mid-October, depending on weather conditions and road access. Snow closes the access roads in winter, which is one of the reasons it stays dramatically less crowded year-round. Access usually comes from longer driving routes. Most visitors arrive from southern Utah destinations like Zion or Bryce Canyon, or from Page, Arizona. Las Vegas is still possible, though the drive is longer and more remote. The final approach into the North Rim feels slower and more isolated, with forested roads replacing the high traffic corridors leading into the South Rim. Once inside, the experience feels intentionally restrained. There are fewer lodging options at the North Rim, with Grand Canyon Lodge being the centerpiece of overnight stays. Dining is limited, services are minimal, and self-service can be inconsistent. That lack of infrastructure is exactly what creates the experience people travel here for. You step out to viewpoints like Bright Angel Point and immediately notice how quiet it is compared to the South Rim. Hiking on the North Rim is more rugged in character. The North Kaibab Trail is the main descent route into the canyon, and it's longer, steeper, and less trafficked than its South Rim counterparts. Instead of multiple entry points and shuttle loops, the North Rim feels like a single concentrated access point into the wilderness. So the question most people eventually ask is whether the North Rim is actually worth the extra drive. If you're already visiting Zion or Bryce Canyon, the answer is yes. It becomes one of the most rewarding quiet canyon experiences in the entire Southwest. If your trip is centered around Phoenix, Flagstaff, or Las Vegas, and this is your first Grand Canyon visit, the South Rim usually delivers more value for the time you invest. Now, weather plays a major role in the difference between the two rims. The North Rim sits roughly 1,000 feet higher in elevation, which keeps it significantly cooler in summer. While the South Rim can feel hot and crowded in peak season, the North Rim often feels like a mountain escape. That same elevation is what contributes to its seasonal closure window. Now let's talk about the 2025 Dragon Bravo fire. That impacted portions of the North Rim region, and it led to temporary disruptions in services and access in some areas. Some areas of forest and infrastructure were impacted, and certain services have been limited or phased back depending on the season and restoration progress. According to ongoing updates from the National Park Service, parts of the North Rim have been reopening in phases while restoration work and infrastructure recovery continue. The biggest thing travelers ask about is Grand Canyon Lodge. At this time, it has not returned to full normal operation in the way most people remember it pre-fire. Conditions can change seasonally and by section, which is why current alerts and closures are always best checked directly through the official NPS channels before planning your trip. If you're looking for certainty, the South Rim is it for you. It's the version of the Grand Canyon that delivers maximum viewpoints with minimum friction. If this is your first visit, or you're traveling with family, or if you're just building a Southwest road trip that includes Phoenix or Las Vegas, the South Rim fits naturally into that route. The North Rim is for travelers who want space. It's for people coming from Zion or Bryce Canyon who are already comfortable with longer drives, fewer amenities, and a slower pace. It rewards patience with quiet viewpoints, cooler temperatures, and a sense that you're standing inside a place that hasn't been engineered for volume. If you're coming for photography, the answer depends less on which rim is better and more on what kind of canyon shot you're trying to get. The South Rim gives you the iconic, layered, wide-angle canyon shots. Places like Mather Point, Yavapai Observation Station, and Hopi Point are classic sunrise and sunset locations because you get depth, scale, and color shifts as the light moves across the canyon. The North Rim feels different visually. Bright Angel Point and Cape Royal give you more expansive, atmospheric shots. The light feels softer, the crowds are lighter, and you can often hold a frame longer without people walking through it. Wildlife is another underrated difference. The South Rim has more frequent human activity, so sightings tend to be smaller moments. Elk near lodges, squirrels along the trails, the occasional condor overhead. The North Rim, because it's quieter and more forested, increases your chances of seeing larger wildlife like elk more naturally in open space, especially in early mornings or near the forest edges. So even photography changes depending on which version of the canyon you choose. You're not just choosing viewpoints, you're choosing what shows up in the picture frame. The Grand Canyon becomes easier to plan when you stop thinking of it in terms of which rim is better and start asking a different question entirely. Are you a South Rim person or are you a North Rim person? A South Rim person tends to value iconic views, easy access, and a sense of structure around their trip. They want to walk up to multiple overlooks in a single afternoon and not worry about logistics. A North Rim person tends to trade convenience for solitude. They're willing to drive farther, stay longer, and accept fewer services in exchange for quieter canyon moments. When people ask the most common planning questions, it usually comes down to a few repeating themes. Which rim has better views comes up constantly. And the truth is, both offer different perspectives of the same canyon. Which rim is less crowded is another major one, with the North Rim consistently offering far fewer visitors. First-time visitors almost always ask which rim they should choose, and in most cases, the South Rim is the more practical introduction. People also frequently ask if they can visit both in a single day, which is where expectations need correction because the drive distance makes it unrealistic for anything other than a pretty much full travel day. Seasonal access is another key question, especially around North Rim opening dates and weather closures. The most useful way to think about it is not competition, not comparison, and it's not even preference, it's alignment. The South Rim aligns with convenience, accessibility, and classic Grand Canyon views from established infrastructure. The North Rim aligns with remoteness, elevation, and a quieter version of a similar landscape. If this is your first time, the South Rim gives you the full iconic experience without complication. If this is your second or third time, or if your version of travel leans more towards solitude and slower roads, the North Rim changes how you experience the canyon entirely. And once you understand that difference, the decision stops feeling like a question of which rim to visit, and it starts feeling like a question of what kind of traveler you are when you stand at the edge of something this large. If this episode helped you make sense of the Grand Canyon in a way that actually makes planning easier, subscribe to the Great Escape podcast for more national park breakdowns that skip the fluff and get straight to how it really feels on the ground. Next up, you'll want to watch the episode on the biggest mistakes people make at the Grand Canyon or the guide to hiking below the rim, because that's where everything you think you know about this place changes. I'll see you in the next episode.